Six Dots, a story of young Louis Braille by Jen Bryant. And this is historical and a true story of Louis Braille and his life. The Braille alphabet. 6 dots. On the day I was born, Papa announced me to the village. Here's my son, Louis. The neighbors came, clucking their tongues, whispering, too small. He won't survive. Oh, but I did survive. I was a curious child, and my eyes studied everything. Mammon's gentle face, lace draping my cradle, the smooth shape of a bread loaf on the table. I grew strong and healthy. When I rode to the baker's on my brother's broad shoulders, or fed the chickens with my sisters, the villagers waved and smiled. So handsome, they cried. And clever, too, my sisters said. At 3, I knew everyone in Coupvray by name. I counted the eggs in my sister's basket and the sparrows in the trees. I repeated stories I heard word for word. But what I loved most was to watch Papa work. People came from far away to have a harness made or a broken bridle mended. In Papa's hands, the rough leather strips became smooth and useful. I wanted to be just like him, but when I reached for a tool, no touchy! Don't touch that, Papa warned. Then more gently, you're too small yet, Louis. Wait till you're older. Too small. Those words. I wanted to be bigger, stronger, older. Perhaps if I showed Papa what I could do. The leather was smooth. The awl was sharp. I knew just how to. Papa! Papa! My life changed that day. A healer bandaged my eye. Again I heard, no touchy, please, don't touch. But the bandage itched so much. My hands, like the sparrows in the trees, were small and quick. I couldn't keep them away. I didn't mean to make things worse, but I did. The infection spread to my other eye until I could see nothing at all. No trees or sparrows, no faces, no lace or loaves of bread. By the time I turned 5, I was completely blind. The villagers whispered, poor Louis Braille, such a clever boy. What will happen to him now? My world was dark and dangerous. I stumbled about the house, banging into the chairs, the walls, the door. My body ached. Where's the sun? I cried. But the sun did not come. I sat by the window, training my ears to do what my eyes could do. Clang, bang, kish, kish. That was Papa in his shop. Swoosh, swish, swoosh, swish. Long-skirted ladies hurrying to the market. Clump, 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 stomp. Soldiers marching down the street. Grrr, 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 grrr. The neighbor's angry dog chained too tight, alone in the dark. I knew just how he felt. My family did what they could. Papa made a wooden cane. Each day I walked a little further. Tap, 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 tap. Counting the steps between the house and the garden, the vineyard and the chicken coop, the baker's and the miller's, and back to Papa's shop. My brother taught me to whistle. And when the sound echoed back, it warned me of things in my path. My sisters made a straw alphabet. Papa made letters with leather strips, or by pounding round-topped nails into boards. With Mammon, I played dominoes, counting the dots with my fingers. The village priest taught me to recognize trees by their touch, flowers by their scent, and birds by their song. I listened closely as he read to me from the Bible and from books of poetry. "Do you have books for blind children?" I asked. "No, Louis," the priest replied. "I'm sorry." When I was older, I went to school with the other village children. All day as they wrote down words and numbers or read out loud from printed pages, I sat in the front row listening and memorizing. "Do you have books for blind children?" I asked again. "No, Louis," the teacher replied. "I'm sorry." But I didn't want people to feel sorry for me. I just wanted to read and to write on my own, like everyone else. The Marquis, a noble lady living nearby, heard about me. She wrote a letter to the Royal School for the Blind, asking if I could study there. Finally, a reply came. "Welcome, Louis." "The priest says they have books for the blind," I told Papa excitedly. "But you're only 10, Mammon cried. "And you'll live there most of the year," my brother added. "Paris is a big city far away," my sisters warned. How could I make them understand? Without books, I would always be poor Louis Braille. I would always be held back like that dog chained too tight. "I love you," I told them, "but I must go." I didn't need my eyes to know that the Royal School in Paris was not a palace. My hard bed was in a damp, crowded room. My uniform itched. My meals were small and cold. The teachers were strict. The older boys teased and stole. How I missed my home. And yet, I stayed. I stayed because somewhere in this old, moldy building there were books for the blind. "Only the best students are allowed to read them," my friend Gabrielle told me. "Then I will be one of the best," I replied. Learning at the blind school was almost like learning in Coupvray. We sat and listened. We memorized and recited. We also had music lessons and made slippers in the workshop. As my fingers flew across the organ keys or between the strips of cloth, I dreamed of reading and writing. I worked and studied as hard as I could. Finally, it was that day. A guide led me to the library. "Sit here," he commanded. There was shuffling, grunting, and scraping, and a thud. "Voila! There it is," he said. "Just trace the raised letters with your fingers." It was a long reach to the top of page 1. My fingers traced the outline of each letter, just as I'd done in Coupvray, with straw and leather. But these waxy letters were huge. After reading the first sentence this way, my hand was halfway down the page. A few sentences more, and I had to turn the page. A few more sentences, 2 more pages, and then the end. "Is that all?" I asked. "There are more," the guide replied, "but they're just like this one. Words as large as my hand. Sentences that took up half a page." I sighed. Even if I read 100 books like this, how much could I learn? I skipped supper. I lay in bed, wishing I was home. When I finally fell asleep, I dreamed that the neighbor's angry dog broke free and he ran to me, licking my face until I laughed and laughed. "Louis! Louis! Get up!" Gabriel shook me awake. It was morning. "The headmaster wants to see us. Let's go!" Everyone had gathered in the big room. Dr. Pignaire spoke. "A French army captain has invented a code to send secret messages during battle. The code is read by touch, not by sight, so we might use it here too. You're each holding a message written with patterns of dots," the headmaster continued. "Each pattern stands for a sound, such as oi, in, ch." We listened as he explained. It wasn't easy. There was a lot to remember. Flipping my paper over, I moved my fingers from left to right, feeling the dots. "Fall back!" I shouted. Everyone laughed. It was a battle order, of course. But now my heart pounded with hope. I asked for another. Again I touched the dots. "Supplies arrive at dawn." "Oi, yes!" the headmaster cried. The others shouted out their messages too. "How are the messages written?" I asked. The headmaster handed me a slate, a wooden frame with a metal piece in the middle. "Slide your paper underneath," he explained. "Now take the stylus, but be careful." The sharp tool was like the awl in Papa's shop. I shivered. "Use it to punch the code into the paper," he said. I made a few of the complicated dot patterns, then flipped the paper to read them by touch. For many weeks I practiced. Reading by touch using dots was a brilliant idea, at least on the battlefield. But for us, the code was so hard that everyone else in the school had given up. "Even a short message takes so many dots, and I can't fit a single symbol under my finger," I complained to Gabrielle. "Plus, the captain's code stands for sounds, not for letters." "So what?" my friend replied. "Well, so why shouldn't we spell words and write sentences like sighted people do?" I argued. This code was a start, but it wasn't nearly good enough. We, the blind people, were still held back. "Would the captain work on improving it with me?" I asked the headmaster. "I'm sorry, Louis. He isn't interested," he replied. Sorry. That word. Long ago, I had watched Papa take rough leather strips and make them useful. Now I knew what I had to do. Late at night, while the others slept, I bent over my slate and punched the pages. I tried hundreds of ways to simplify the captain's code. I worked until my back was stiff and my fingers ached. Often, I fell asleep a few minutes before morning. A year passed, then another year, and another. That winter, I turned 15. I was often sick, but I wouldn't rest. Finally, it was ready to test. I asked the headmaster to choose something from his own library, a book I'd never heard of before. "Please, read it aloud," I said. Dr. Pignaire began. After a few minutes, I interrupted. "You can go much faster, sir." As he read, I copied down the words, spelling each one correctly. My new code used just 6 dots, arranged in 2 columns like dominoes. Each dot pattern stood for a letter of the alphabet. "Fini," said Dr. Pignaire when he reached the end of chapter 1. "Finished." I turned my pages over. Reading by touch, I recited the entire chapter. "Louis, you did it!" he shouted. Word spread quickly. The other students rushed to try it. "So easy! Oh, so fast!" We can read words and write letters like everyone else. As my friends traded messages, I remembered watching Papa in his shop, bent over rough strips of leather, making them useful. I had become like him, after all. Author's note. If I asked you to make a list of great inventors, who would be on the list? Gutenberg, Da Vinci, Edison. Then there are Bell, Franklin, Marconi, Tesla, Carver, Whitney, Hooper. Just a sampling of more names you might consider, based on the number, kind, and overall impact of their creations. But do you know that nearly every day, whenever you're in school, restaurant, hotel, elevator, bank, or other public space, the invention, a teenager, is there too, of a teenager. The name Braille deserves to be on everyone's list of great inventions. Just like these others, he recognized a rough idea, a fingertip code used on battlefields, and he worked exhaustively to shape it into something that changed the world forever. Unlike those other inventors, however, Braille was a child inventor who worked alone and without public support or financial backing. Living in a converted prison building and already suffering the early signs of lung disease, Louis Braille managed to create a system of reading and writing for the blind that is still used today. In the past several centuries, no one so young has developed something that has such a lasting and profound impact on so many people. This is my second book about Louis Braille. In 1994, my young adult biography of Braille was published as part of the series Great Achievers, Lives of the Physically Challenged. The book was designed to inform, and it did so well enough, I think. But more recently, as I encountered examples of the Braille alphabet in public libraries and on college campuses, in airports and at ATM machines, I asked myself, what did it feel like to be Louis Braille? Nothing I'd read about the young Frenchman, including my own account, had led me to experience Braille's emotions. What was it like to be Louis Braille? This story is my attempt to answer these questions. Why was Louis' invention of Braille so important? The Braille family showed courage and empathy toward Louis. Was that unusual? What changes did Louis make to the Braille system after his first demonstration? How was Braille kept? How has Braille kept pace with the digital age? What happened after Louis finished his studies? What role did music play in his life? And what else did Louis invent? When was the Braille system of reading and writing officially adopted? So your author thought about all these curious things and brought us a true story, a picture book of Louis Braille and his invention of the Braille system.